Roger Federer's inner circle just declared something that brought the entire tennis world to a dead stop. And the name they gave a legend wasn't Swiatek, wasn't Sabalenka, wasn't Goff. She is the next legend. Those precise words, spoken about a 20-year-old girl from the Philippines who, just 12 months ago, nobody outside Manila had marked on their calendar. And here is what makes this moment gut punch extraordinary. This wasn't flattery. This wasn't a polite quote buried inside a press release. This was a deliberate, public, full-throated declaration from the man who coached the greatest tennis player who ever lived, delivered on live television with the entire sport watching. But before you understand why those words carry the weight of a Grand Slam trophy, you need to understand the journey, because what Alex Eala went through to reach this moment wasn't just impressive, it was borderline impossible. This is the story nobody fully told. And by the time this ends, you will understand exactly why the crowd fell silent and why that silence meant everything. Picture a tennis court in Manacor, Spain. Scorching sun, clay dust rising off red ground. A 14-year-old Alexandra Eala had just arrived from the Philippines, racket in hand, watching players twice her size and twice her experience move with the kind of fluency that takes years to develop. She had no ranking, no WTA points, no assurance that any of this would work. What she possessed was something far rarer, a quiet ferocity that announces nothing until the moment it detonates. Born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, Philippines, to a businessman father and a mother who once stood on a podium at the 1985 Southeast Asian Games as a competitive swimmer, Alex Eala came into this world with athletic instinct embedded in her DNA. At 14, her family made a decision that redefined her future. She would train full-time at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Manacor, Spain. That wasn't merely a coaching decision. It was an act of extraordinary belief. The Rafa Nadal Academy doesn't produce tourists. It produces competitors. Within 2 years of arriving, Eala sent a quiet signal to the tennis world. She captured the Australian Open junior doubles title in 2020, partnering with Priscilla Honourable then, barely a breath later, she claimed the Roland Garros junior doubles crown in 2021. And in 2022, she became the first Filipino ever to win a Grand Slam junior singles title, taking the U.S. Open Junior Championship and rising to world number 2 in the junior rankings. Championships, records, history, and still the professional game wasn't paying attention. Because junior tennis and professional tennis exist in entirely different universes. The junior circuit rewards potential. The WTA Tour punishes inexperience with merciless efficiency. You can dominate under 18 competition and then step onto the main draw at Miami and get taken apart inside 45 minutes by someone ranked 200 places above you. That gap between junior greatness and professional survival has swallowed careers far more decorated than Eala's. Her early WTA appearances told a familiar story: early exits, qualifying losses, rounds that didn't go the direction her talent deserved. By the end of 2024, she had climbed to number 143 in the world rankings. A number that doesn't earn you main draw entries at the biggest tournaments, doesn't keep sponsor phones ringing, and doesn't put you on anyone's shortlist for a legend conversation. She was ranked 143rd in the world, just another promising name on a very long list of promising names that the sport regularly forgets. But here's what that ranking didn't capture, what no ranking ever captures. It didn't measure the way she trained at midnight when everyone else had gone to sleep. It didn't quantify the hours she spent rebuilding her serve, sharpening her backhand redirect, developing the tactical intelligence that would later reduce a 5-time Grand Slam champion to a footnote in her highlight reel. The ranking was a snapshot of her present. It knew nothing about her future, and her future was about to arrive with zero warning. Still with us. Because what happened next at the 2025 Miami Open didn't just change Alex Eala's career, it shook the very foundations of women's tennis. And nobody saw it coming. March 2025, Miami Gardens, Florida, the Miami Open. One of the most prestigious WTA 1000 events on the entire calendar. The kind of tournament where world number 1 players lose sleep over their draws. The kind of event where a wild card from the Philippines ranked 140th is supposed to show up, compete bravely, lose in the first or second round, and quietly return to the challenger circuit with a pleasant memory and maybe a small confidence boost. Alex Eala arrived with a wild card in her hand and absolutely nothing to lose. Round 1, she defeated American Katie Volanets 6-3, 7-6, a solid professional win. The tennis world nodded politely and moved on. Round 2, she dismantled Yelena Ostapenko, the 2017 French Open champion, 7-6, 7-5. People paused. Ostapenko was ranked 25th. That wasn't supposed to happen, but wild cards pull upsets occasionally. The world shrugged. Round 3, she obliterated Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion, ranked 5th on the planet, 6-4, 6-2. Not close, not a battle. Eala took the Australian Open winner apart methodically, clinically, without apparent nerves, as though she had been defeating slam champions her entire professional life. Now people stopped shrugging. Then came the quarter-final. Iga Swiatek, world number 2, 4-time French Open title holder, arguably the most complete clay court player of her generation. A player who has made the sport's finest talents feel diminished on the biggest occasions. In straight sets, Eala won, the first Filipino in history to defeat a top 10 player in the Open era. The crowd at Hard Rock Stadium didn't know whether to erupt or simply stare. In her own words, speaking later about that week, Eala admitted, "I didn't expect to be in the quarterfinals, that's for sure. I just took it match by match. Miami is a tournament I look forward to every year, and I was lucky enough to get a wild card again. I knew I had to make the most of it and give my best as soon as I stepped on that court." Lucky. She used the word lucky. But what unfolded on those courts had nothing to do with fortune. It was the product of years of invisible labor, now suddenly visible. She eventually fell to world number 4 Jessica Pegula in a fierce 3-set semifinal, 7-6, 5-7, 6-3, a loss that stung, but a loss that also earned her 390 ranking points, $332,160 in prize money, and something no amount of money can purchase, a place in history. First Filipino to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal. First Filipino inside the WTA Top 100, vaulting from 140th to number 75 in a single week. Rafa Nadal himself, the man who built the academy that shaped her, took to social media with characteristic warmth. "Congratulations, Alex. What a great win for you and for the Philippines." But back at his home in Switzerland, another legend was paying close attention, and he was about to get his coach involved. Paul Annacone isn't simply a tennis coach. He is a living encyclopedia of what elite tennis greatness actually demands. During his coaching career, he guided Pete Sampras to multiple Wimbledon titles and steered Roger Federer through some of the most refined seasons in the sport's recorded history. He understands better than almost anyone alive the particular combination of talent, temperament, and tactical genius that separates very good players from all-time legends. When Annacone steps in front of a camera on Tennis Channel Live and declares his admiration for someone, the tennis world listens with a fundamentally different level of attention. Speaking about Eala weeks before Indian Wells 2026, Annacone didn't hedge. He didn't offer cautious praise wrapped in qualifications. He said with complete conviction, "She's got a smile that lights up a room. I remember last year when she beat Swiatek, and she did it with a lot of grace and humility. For me, it was terrific to see her take that match and watch her play after that and watch her try to continue to progress, because I like her game. She's got a lot of good hand-eye coordination and the ability to take the ball early and redirect." He highlighted specifically the technical quality that defines elite returners, the capacity to absorb incoming pace and redirect it with precision, converting an opponent's power into your own weapon. That is not a skill that surfaces accidentally. Federer himself built championships on that exact mechanism. Annacone wasn't finished. He observed something that transcends technique, the phenomenon surrounding Eala's presence wherever she competes. "The fan stuff is always fun to me, because whenever you see players from smaller countries, the fans are so passionate when they get to the top. Passionate doesn't begin to describe it." Filipino supporters have followed Eala across continents, flooding venues in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and California with a noise level that tournament officials have scrambled to accommodate. Former player Jeannie Bouchard, watching the hysteria from the Tennis Channel studio, was asked if she could recall any female athlete commanding this level of global devotion. She hesitated, then answered, "Taylor Swift." She wasn't entirely joking. Bouchard later elaborated, "Maybe Manny Pacquiao when he was at the peak of his career, and I think if Eala can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? Sky's the limit, on the court, off the court." Then Martina Navratilova, 18 Grand Slam titles, one of the most respected analytical voices in tennis's entire history, spoke directly to the WTA about Eala's potential. Her assessment was surgical. "She is clever. She is a skilled left-hander. She uses her variety well. But Navratilova, characteristically, pushed further. She identified the precise adjustment Eala must make. I think where she can improve the most is her serve, make it pay off more. She needs a bigger serve and a bigger kick. She needs to hold her ground and believe. Four-time Grand Slam champion Kim Clijsters compared Eala's cultural significance to Michael Jordan, not a tennis comparison, a Michael Jordan comparison. The tennis establishment wasn't just noticing Alex Eala. It was collectively building a pedestal. But wait, not everyone was celebrating. While legends lined up to crown her, a wave of skepticism and pressure was building that nearly derailed everything. The moment a 20-year-old from a country with zero WTA title history gets compared simultaneously to Michael Jordan and Taylor Swift, the critics sharpened their instruments, and they came prepared. The central argument from skeptics arrived wrapped in statistical precision. Eala had exactly one Grand Slam match victory on her record entering 2026. 1. Her 2025 French Open debut ended in a first-round defeat to Mira Andreeva. Wimbledon brought a first-round loss to Barbara Krejcikova, the reigning champion. The Australian Open 2026 saw her dismantled by Alicia Parks, ranked 99th, in a match where Eala appeared to completely collapse after dominating the opening set. The scoreline, 6-3, 2-6, 2-6, told a story about inconsistency that the Instagram celebrations carefully cropped out of the frame. ESPN's analysis after that Australian Open exit was pointed. With a higher ranking comes a different kind of pressure. The competition gets tougher, the margins get thinner, and every match becomes a test not just of skill, but of consistency and composure. Opponents had begun studying her patterns. Her vulnerabilities were documented. The serve that Navratilova had flagged publicly, opponents were targeting it with increasing aggression. The WTA Tour scheduling situation added further friction. Despite drawing the largest crowds at multiple tournaments, Eala had repeatedly found herself assigned to secondary courts at unusual hours, an arrangement that frustrated her supporters and raised uncomfortable questions about whether the sport's power structure was genuinely invested in her rise. One fan comment captured the mood bluntly: "Alex is undeniably the most recognizable player on tour right now, and they keep hiding her on Court 5 at midnight." Tournament organizers eventually corrected course at the Dubai Tennis Championships, placing her as the final match of the evening on center court against Jasmine Paolini. The stadium filled, she won, then fell to Coco Gauff in the quarterfinals. Critics pointed to that defeat as evidence of a ceiling. Supporters pointed to the journey from number 143 to number 31 in 12 months as evidence of a trajectory that makes ceilings irrelevant. ESPN stated the challenge plainly. For Eala to take the next step, her serve has to become a more dependable weapon against elite opponents with big serves. She cannot afford to rely solely on her return game to control matches. The question hanging over Indian Wells 2026 wasn't whether Alex Eala was talented. Nobody serious disputed the talent. The question was whether she possessed the consistency, the physical resilience, and the mental architecture to win when opponents specifically design their game plan to neutralize everything she does brilliantly. Indian Wells would deliver the verdict. For the first time in her professional existence, Alexandra Eala arrived at a WTA 1000 tournament as a seeded player, seed number 31, with a first round by waiting. Her name printed on the main draw bracket, not as a wild card courtesy case, but as a legitimate, ranked, expected contender. The Filipino army descended on the California desert in numbers that visibly transformed the atmosphere inside the BNP Paribas Open grounds. Flags, jerseys, chants, and Tagalog echoing off the palm trees and hard-court surfaces. For a sporting community that had waited decades for a Filipino player to reach this level, Indian Wells 2026 wasn't just a tennis tournament. It was a coronation ceremony. All it needed was the performance to match. Her second-round opponent, Diana Yastremska, aggressive, unpredictable, the kind of opponent who deploys enormous serves and flat ground strokes to physically overpower players shorter than herself. Exactly the profile Navratilova had warned Eala about. Exactly the test critics said she wasn't ready for. The match unfolded with brutal honesty about every weakness the analysts had identified. Eala struggled. She wavered. She let Yastremska back into moments where the match should have been put away. The concentration lapses that had been flagged as a recurring vulnerability appeared precisely when they could cause maximum damage. And then, the deciding set, down under pressure, the crowd silent with the specific kind of silence that forms when 40,000 people collectively hold their breath. Eala didn't panic. She implemented precisely what Navratilova had prescribed. Bigger serve, held her ground, deployed the slice the 18-time slam champion called down pat. She finished the match having hit only 4 double faults, a direct, measurable response to the most prominent criticism aimed at her game. She won, her first WTA 1000 third-round appearance in her career. And waiting in round 3, Coco Gauff, world number 4, Indian Wells center stage, the biggest match of Alex Eala's professional life. Reflecting on the Miami run that started everything, Eala said, "I think that has to be the highlight of my career so far. That's what put me on the map. Everything clicked after that. I look back at that moment and I just think, wow, it was insane. It's crazy to believe that actually happened." From number 143, 1 year later, seated and standing across the net from Coco Gauff at Indian Wells, and the voice ringing loudest in her corner, the coaching philosophy of Roger Federer's own architect. The crowd that fell silent during that Yastremska match wasn't silent from boredom. They were silent because they recognized what they were witnessing, not a player surviving, but a player arriving. And now we arrive at the question every single person in tennis is asking right now. What does this all mean? What happens next? And what does one word from Federer's world truly represent? From a wild card nobody circled to a seeded force the greatest minds in tennis are publicly anointing. Alexandra Eala's story is 12 months old and already historic. Paul Annacone spoke. Navratilova mapped her future. Clijsters invoked Jordan. And somewhere in all of that, the legacy of Federer placed a hand on the shoulder of something entirely new. The crowd went silent, not because nothing was happening. The crowd went silent because everyone present understood simultaneously, without a word exchanged, that they were watching the beginning of something enormous. So here is the question this story leaves open deliberately, because it deserves your answer in the comments below. Is Alex Eala simply the next great player, or is she the first player from an entirely new tennis continent, opening a door that will never close again? Sonnet 4.6